Welcome to Kalimahurra with me, George Galloway, on Al Mayadeen Television, coming to you from London. Now, for most people in the world, well, many people at least, Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, is something of a monster, of apparently low intellect, certainly low morals, and levels of politesse that have never been seen in an elected politician before. That goes, actually, I'm sure, for most people in the United States of America, although Donald Trump retains a base of support which could just see him win a second term. But there's a reason for Donald Trump. Business as usual, the usual things, the usual political class were on the ballot paper when Donald Trump was elected, and the people rejected it because they had been up close and personal to the usual political class for a very long time, and a lot of good it had done them, and I mean that sarcastically. They had seen the deindustrialization of their own country. They had seen unlimited budgets for foreign wars, interventions, invasions, occupations all over the world. They were presented with a Democratic Party opponent to Donald Trump who typified, personified all that had gone before. The sense of entitlement of the so-called liberal elite in the United States. They knew instinctively that the pattern of foreign wars, foreign interventions, not America first, but anybody in America with money and anybody else in the world with money rather than themselves. It's now, I think, an established fact that Hillary Clinton lost the presidency of the United States rather than Donald Trump winning it. And she lost it in what's called the Rust Belt. It's called the Rust Belt for a reason, because the people were left to rust along with the industrial plant and machinery of deindustrialized United States of America. Now, the fact that Donald Trump campaigned on a platform of no more involvement in foreign wars and occupations, no more nation building around the world whilst their own nation atrophied and, industrially speaking, died, is a key factor in Donald Trump's victory. The fact that he hasn't kept that promise, the fact that he continues to make war and threaten war around the world, the fact that the factories are still rusting in the Rust Belt is, of course, a truism. But nonetheless, Donald Trump retains something of the anti-establishment, something of the outsider about him. He is hated by the normal, usual political class and their media echo chamber. He has surrounded himself with some of the worst people in history. And it's not entirely clear why he has, because those people have been leading him into one foreign policy disaster after another. The question of Palestine, Jerusalem, the so-called deal of the century, which turns out to be so bankrupt of any possibility of being a solution to the Israel-Palestine question, is, I think, the result of bad advisors. I have no doubt that Donald Trump's instinct is to trade, to bargain, to haggle, like some overinflated trader in the bazaar. But the people he has hired to do the lead-up work, the approach work, to set the scene for the haggling, have made an almighty disaster of the Israel-Palestine track. In Syria, I am sure that Donald Trump wanted to withdraw from Syria. I'm sure that Donald Trump wanted to make a deal, particularly with the Russian President Putin, to bring an end to the war in Syria, which has proved so disastrous for everyone in that country and has created a Frankenstein monster of enormous proportions of people who will at one stage spill out, cascade around the rest of the world, proving a clear and present danger to all of us. But again, the military-industrial complex, the cadre around him have succeeded so far in making his plans for withdrawal from Syria more or less null and void. I'm sure that the same is true in Venezuela. The fiasco of the Juan Guaido coup, into which Trump was led by criminals, literally criminals, convicted criminals, like Elliot Abrams and John Bolton, who's not a convicted criminal, but is everyone's idea of a criminal, have led Trump into what is, frankly, not just a fiasco, but a piece of utter ridiculousness as political theatre, the likes of which has seldom been seen. And as I speak, the US Navy is steaming towards the Straits of Hormuz. The B-52 bombers are stacked up in Qatar, in America's biggest military base in the entire world. I just say, it's my honest view, that if Iraq turned out to be a military disaster for the United States, attacking Iran will knock it, as we say in England, into a cocked hat. Because I cannot think of a theatre of war so disaster-prone for the United States and any allies foolish enough to join her than any attempt at regime change and war in Iran. All of that is to set the scene, because here in England, he's coming over the horizon like a great orange blimp, like a great barrage balloon. He will soon be looming over London, because in probably her last act as Prime Minister of Britain, Theresa May has forced the Queen to invite Donald Trump for a state visit. What greater indignity on a venerated old lady, as Queen Elizabeth II undoubtedly is, than to force her to give board and lodgings to Donald J. Trump. But that's what's happened. Whether he will be able to go down the Mall from Buckingham Palace in an open carriage must be open to question, because there will be 100, 200, 300,000 people there to try and burst the barrage balloon. But he is the recipient of a relatively rare honour of a royal invitation for a state visit to Britain. So we have an audience here of distinguished experts, one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. We're discussing the coming state visit of Donald J. Trump. It's only fair I let the only American in the room, though I promise you he's a very different kind of American, to Donald Trump, one of America's finest journalists, Patrick Hennigsen. Patrick, welcome to the show. What would you like to say? Did I characterize things correctly or not?
Generally, you put me really